Welcome to the Career Jiu-Jitsu podcast, where we connect the art of Jiu-Jitsu with your career. Our mission is to empower and inspire you with engaging conversations and valuable insights from people just like you who benefit from the shared relationship between your workplace and the art of Jiu-Jitsu, leading you to a more fulfilling. Thank you for tuning into the Career Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Today, Frank and I have a treat for you. We have a product marketing consultant for you today. So I want to start with this question. If Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and product marketing were teaching the same exact lesson, what would that lesson be? Interesting question to think about, but Doug is going to help us answer that question for sure. Yeah. So today we have Doug Kimball. Doug is from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Like I said, he is a product marketing consultant. He contributes to the Product Marketing Alliance, and he wrote a book, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today, which is this book right here. If you can see this, I know if you're a listener, you can't see it, but if you are viewing this podcast, you can see this is Doug's amazing book that he is going to talk about today, and it is called So What, Why, Who Cares? So we will leave in the description, we will leave information about this book and where you can get it. And for his jiu-jitsu experience, Doug, he trains at Veritas BJJ under Justin Overton, and Veritas BJJ is an affiliate of Hobson Mora. If those of you who are in the jiu-jitsu world should know who Hobson Mora is. Hobson Mora is a world-renowned jiu-jitsu competitor. He's a BJJ world champion, multi-BJJ world champion. And so we are excited to have a chance to speak with Doug, who knows him very well. So let's get this rolling. So welcome to the podcast, Doug.
Thank you. Excited to be here. I mean, I've been looking forward to this and listening to your guys' podcast. A lot of good conversations. So I'm thrilled to be part of this.
We're very excited to have you on the show, Doug. As you know, I'm a high school teacher and I teach business. One of my courses is marketing. And what I always tell my students in marketing is so many of the lessons that you learn in marketing can be applied to life in general, which is just like jiu-jitsu. And so I'm very excited to hear about your journey. We're going to start with your jiu-jitsu, and then we're going to weave in your career experience. So let's go way back in time, jump in the time machine, go back to where Doug decides, I want to try my first class in jiu-jitsu. What was the spark that made you take that first step?
It was 19 years ago, and it was actually my Yoshukai karate instructor, Michael Donovan, he started, 6 months before I did. They kept trying to drag me out there, and back then my stand-up game was pretty decent. I was pretty comfortable with that. So the idea of the ground game, it looks fun. Finally gave in and went out and tried it out. And my instructor, who's still one of my best friends and mentor, he's one of these guys that would travel around and go to schools because he was a traveling guy, and he'd bring back whatever it is he was learning. So my first class was in this guy's basement he built. It was a mats and everything, and we learned rubber guard. And so knowing next to nothing about jiu-jitsu, being as flexible as a 2x4, my first experience was learning rubber guard. And then we sparred, and I got, like most people, my butt kicked because I had no ground game. It just, for some reason, it just kept getting me under my skin. I'm like, okay, I got to keep trying this. So yeah, stuck with it. And it was it's been one of the best decisions I've made. But like most people, it was like, no, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm a big guy. I'm strong. I'm okay. Humble.
But then you realize a lot of our guests who are, athletic in nature or big in nature, they're always like, oh yeah, I got this. And they go in and they're like, oh crap, I really don't. It's a different world. On the ground is just all your skills stand up really do not play. I mean, you're in better shape. Yeah, you can move around a little bit more, but it doesn't do that much. It's a new world, a whole new world. You probably heard that song going through your head as you were rolling down in the deep.
Talk about being forced into flexibility, Doug. Like you said, you were like a 2x4 and you had to learn the rubber guard. That's like forcing you into flexibility.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I can still throw, the basic rubber guard. I'm not, I'm not a 10th planet person, but because that's what I started to learn as a movement style, I'll still throw that now at some of the people and hold them in place for a bit. And they're like, okay, no, I don't love to sit there, but I feel like I can still do that.
Yeah, it can be. I remember one of the guys in my gym got me in rubber guard, and I was just like, I just couldn't get out. And I'm like, what? And he said, this is just a great nap guard for me to catch my breath and then try to work something after I catch my breath. So, Jason, maybe you got to teach me some rubber guard. I need
Long night.
another now. As the clock burner, I need to know more of these strategies where you could nap,
Yep.
right?
That's why I like the gi is I can tie you up and slow you down.
Yes, yes. The gi is. There are people who they start taking their gi here, you know you're in trouble. Once they start grabbing their gi, you know they, yeah, that is just an intimidation factor. Like I'm gonna just start grabbing my gi, even though I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, just to make the person freak out,
That's
right?
what I do. I got guys in my gym still. I mean, I'll pull a gi out, and they're like, "I don't like where you're going with this." I'm like, "I'm not really sure where I'm going with it yet. I'm just kind of seeing where you're going to move to see if I can choke you, or sometimes I'm just hanging on for dear life." But for your point, if I get the gi around the back of their neck, they're like, "Oh boy, I better be aware."
It changes their focus from attack to let me start to defend, right? Bringing in your background of psychology. So tell us a little bit about your study in psychology and counseling, about your journey there. And then I'd really like to hear first I want you to tell us that, and then I want to hear a little bit about, do you use anything you learned in psychology on the mats? So let's start with what got you into your psychology. I think you went to Illinois State
Yep.
University, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Both
Okay.
degrees
So
there.
talk us through a little bit about that background.
Yeah, I went to when I started in college. I actually started out as a computer science major because I really liked computers, and we're talking computers back in the old days. First semester of college, I absolutely bombed at what I was trying to do for computer science. So I said, okay, I like understanding psychology people, so I switched my major. It was a very good decision. Got done with that, and I went straight back into masters because I knew I had nothing. I didn't know what I would do with psychology at that point.
Uh,
So I got into school psychology because I had my person I was with at the time was doing a lot of stuff with school psychology. Like, this is kind of fun. Didn't really enjoy it. There was too much classification of people by numbers or by specifics. And I'm like, I look at people, I look at who they are as a person. And they had a counseling education program. And I'm like, all my life, people have always been able to talk to me about everything, sometimes more than I want. But I've always been one of those people that people just open up to. And like, I enjoy this. And so went through the counseling program, really enjoyed that. Did an extra special time and afterwards and focused what they call the National Board Certification Council. So I got this national certification, and I did that for 7 years. I got it. My first job was doing academic counseling. So working with student athletes, everything from tutoring and time management and guidance, career planning, all those different things to help, some of these student athletes who came in who were very, very physically talented, but had never really been taught how to study or how to retain knowledge or how to use knowledge. Did a lot of guidance around that. Had the opportunity to take a career counseling job for 4 years during that same time. I had a great boss who allowed me to kind of just go back and forth between these two different schools. And I also picked up doing personal counseling. So got to hit kind of the trifecta of all things working with people, which again has always been one of my passions. I just like helping and listening and guiding people and asking the right questions. So I really enjoyed that. Some tough conversations, of course, as a counselor. You hear things that, wow, and you get also a sense of perspective. I heard people bring me their problems. I'm like, man, my problems are nothing by comparison. Well, we'll tell you one quick story that stood out. I was doing career counseling. This kid came in and he was complaining about his Audi A4 that had gotten stuck in the snow and this and that. And I'm in college. I'm driving a little bitty, piece of crap car. And like this guy, good looking guy, fit. From the outside, he had everything that you would think, oh, hey, this guy's awesome. But then he started telling me his life story. I'm like, man, it was tough. So he had the money, he had the looks, all those things, but inside he was messed up. So that really sat with me for a long time and gave me perspective. There's like, you got to really understand people. And so that's kind of my journey. And then if I switched over to business, and I still I miss the counseling from time to time. I really do.
So can you tell me a little bit about how your counseling background, if you think about counseling, what are you doing constantly? You're delving in, you're finding the root of a problem, and you're trying to create a solution.
Yep.
How does that relate to jujitsu?
You got to meet people where they are with their capabilities, their interests, their passions. I'll give another good example. So there's two people in my school I call out. This one guy, when he first came in, and I admit to the initial judgment, this guy walked in, he was newer to the school, but he was a purple belt. Came in, bald head, all tatted up. He had that look. of a guy that your first visual judgment, for some people might be like, okay, this guy's going to be kind of a tool. One of the nicest guys, one of my favorite training partners. We will beat the snot of each other, have a great time. Turned out just a really neat guy. And so, but I had to meet this guy and understand who he was and kind of feel it out. See, and ask the right questions, what he wanted to do. He'd only trained at one school his entire life, and he'd never gotten exposure to different things. That's what he was looking for. Another young lady I just promoted to blue belt a couple weeks ago when Hobson was in, she's lost 40 pounds since she started jiu-jitsu. She'll never be a competitor. She's just a hobbyist jiu-jitsu. But the questions I've asked her is like, what do you want to get out of jiu-jitsu? What is important to you? She's got some health issues. So she's really just doing this to make her health better and to force herself to train regularly to improve her life. And so when I look at that parallel, I got a new student come in. I'm like, what brought you in? What are you trying to accomplish? What excites you about jiu-jitsu? What scares you about jiu-jitsu? Ask some of those questions. And you see them be much more interested in engaging depending on the person, as opposed to, let's just go train. That's going back to my product marketing mindset. Go train Uma Plata. That's a feature. That's a functionality. That's a task. But if I say, what do you want to accomplish? What are you trying to get to? Oh, I want to be a little more limber. I want to be more flexible. I want to be able to play with my kids, get down on the floor, get up off the floor. Now you're giving them goals, and then you get there a lot more head nodding.
Power of pulling through questions.
Yeah.
Rather than just superimposing some kind of formula for success.
Right. Yeah. Because your success formula and my success formula, they're very different. I don't want you to become me on the mats. I want you to become you on the mats, because that's, who we're going to be are very, very different. I've got, white belts that come in and they get really good really fast. And you get some blue belts that are still learning how to do some of the basics. That's just different people.
Each journey is separate. There's so much wisdom in that. Absolutely. So going through all of this, doing your counseling, helping other people, solving problems, it's really interesting because that whole paradigm shifts so nicely to marketing and what you're doing now in marketing. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how you do your marketing consultancy, what problems you solve, and how you use the same format of asking questions and trying to find solutions as you did with your counseling?
Yeah, and I actually reference it in my book, because when I first made that switch from counseling to business, there was that, what the heck have I done here? Because it's, this is a very different world. And I've learned that asking the right questions makes all the difference. And so when it comes to working with clients or companies, I can walk in and pretty quickly, because of my experience, diagnose what the problems are, but I can't jump in, because then again, I'm doing the same problem. So what I spend time is, what are you trying to accomplish? Who are your audience? What are their pain points? What are the things that they want to respond to? Who are they engaging with? Who are competitors? I ask a lot of questions to understand what is the goal of the business. What are the things they're trying to put in front of their prospect audience? How do they want to grow? How do we know what success looks like? That's one of the biggest things they don't always think about, is that, we just want to grow. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean more clients? Does that mean a better feature function list? Does that mean better recognition by the industry analysts? There's a lot of ways you can answer that question. So a lot of it's just me sitting down and asking, and talking to the salespeople, talking to the product teams, talking to the executives, and say, what does the success look like to you? And you get totally different answers. And using those questions to help fill in the gaps, and usually leads me to more questions, because now I understand better. 30 days later, I understand the picture better. 60 days later, the picture is even more clear. And then coming back to them and starting to force them, the clients, to ask questions of themselves also, because the more they question where they're trying to go, the better they can improve their trajectory.
Wow. So part of the thing that I read in the pre-interview was, one of the issues that a lot of your clients have is that they are maybe high tech and they have a product that there's a lot of buzzwords, and you help them get that image across much more cleanly to, I don't want to say a lay person, but somebody who's not necessarily in that industry.
Yeah. No, the best example is a company I worked for, I think 2 companies back. The solution we had is what's called a semantic knowledge graph, which is probably among the most complex technologies out there. It's basically what powers search engines and makes things like generative AI work. It was very, very complex technology. And we when I came on board, we had a tendency to talk about it in the terms of technology and what the data scientists would speak to. Data scientists aren't writing the checks. It's their bosses that are writing the checks for these. It's the business owners that are writing the checks. And so I had to spend a lot of time with the CEO, who was the founder and the creator of the technology, to really draw out, okay, cool technology, very, very powerful. What does it do? How does it make my life better? How does it improve volume, profit, and share? How does it shorten sales cycles? How does it speed my access to knowledge? How does it help me to share data faster, information faster? How does it answer questions? And so that's been my, I joke that I like to think very simply. I'm probably a bit demeaning to myself, but I just like to ask the simple questions. What does it do? Why do I care? I mean, not to throw the framework out there, but that's one of the biggest reasons behind that framework is we have to ask those questions of why do I care about this? It might be the coolest technology in the world, but if I don't understand what it does for me, big deal. I mean, you were mentioned before we started recording, your talk with a BMW example, the commercial. You pull up a BMW and you look at their brochure and they dive into it. And they might get into some technical feature that is happening because it shows up in the dashboard. It's got the this and that, the technology behind that. And you're like, I just want to push a button to turn the fan on. I don't need to know all the diodes behind it and whether it's got high tensile strength. Like, you lost me. Does the car go when I turn it on?
Right. And what's the experience? Because people buy experiences.
Yes.
They don't,
Yeah.
the sizzle, not the steak kind of,
Yeah, exactly.
kind of thing. So you also talked about the power of storytelling, which is really interesting because I read a book and unfortunately it's not available in English, but it's from a Spanish author, Isra Bravo, and it's called Storytelling Savage. Storytelling Savage. And he talks about the fact he's a corporate consultant and he talks to CEOs around the world about how to sell their product. And he says, everybody buys a story. You have to sell a story, even if it's an engineer who you think doesn't want to hear a story. It's buried in our DNA. And so, how do you wrap? Like, what's your process of wrapping? So, you ask the right questions, right? What does it do? Now you know what it does. How do you wrap that into a story for the ultimate consumer?
A lot of times I like to think in terms of movie trailers. If you think about a movie trailer, it's a preview to a story, but sometimes it's, depending how well it's done, it's a mini story in itself. You set up the villain, you set up the problem, the scary part, the goal, and then you put obstacles in front of that and you make some exciting things, you introduce the characters and you flow through. And a good preview make goes, okay, cool, I get the idea, but now I want the meat behind that. And so I think a well done trailer like that should leave you enough to be hungry. And so when I look at storytelling, it can be the same way where, again, you set up the problem, the pain, or you put the outcome in the very front, and then you get the situation. Like there's a framework called OCR, Gartner does OCR, outcome, situation, impact, results. Set the result up first, and then you go through the story. People have been telling stories for 75,000 years or so, whether it's the visual stories they drew on the walls, whether it's sitting around the campfire and telling stories. That's just human nature, and that's more memorable. I can tell you features and functions. You go, huh? If I tell you what that feature and function allowed you to light your campfire faster so you can have those stories, now you anchor it in human nature and human psychology and human flow. That makes it much more, I guess, memorable and appealing. It's the same way about teaching jiu-jitsu. When I teach jiu-jitsu, I don't just say, you grab the arm and you wrench it, you pull it off. I take them through the flow of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how this is going to cause a reaction. Here's how the person's going to move. Make it into that story and be like, oh, okay, that flows better.
I never really thought about that, but I really like that visual of a move is a story. It's here you are at the bottom, you're feeling smothered. Here's how all of a sudden you're going to get a little space. You're developing a story, and
right.
And the result or the outcome that you were saying with OCR, whatever it was the outcome is you're going to get out of it and have a submission at the end. So that
if you show a move, if you advertise a feature, if you talk to a functionality without giving me a rationale as to why I should care, how I'm going to make my life better, then you feel better. Okay, I've talked about the feature. Box checked. Now, have you sold anything? Have you convinced anybody? Have you changed anybody's life? That's a little questionable. Why should I do a shrimp? I mean, I say I shrimp all the time. 19 years later, I'm still shrimping to get out of stuff. It's the most basic move in jiu-jitsu ever. You can never do too much of it. And that's why going back to the basics, as opposed to trying to be clever when you're doing storytelling or clever when you're talking about features and functions, don't be clever. Be memorable. Just make it stick in people's heads as opposed to, here's the fancy flying purple squirrel joke. Well, what does it do for me?
Yeah, it's just sugar. That all leads right back into your book. So tell it, because this philosophy you're talking about, why, who cares? Tell us a little bit about your book, the title, where'd you come up with the title, and a little bit of the content and theory, and then who would read your book and what would they get out of it?
Yeah. And so again, the title to me, it really isn't mine. So the framework was introduced to me by a boss, I think probably 15 years ago now. And the short version is I was presenting to him a deck I wanted to put in front of our sales team for a competitive response. And I'm on 5 or 6 slides and he goes, Doug, stop. This sucks. I'm like, okay, this is good. He said, take out a Post-it note and write this down. So I took out the Post-it note, I wrote down, so what, why, and who cares? And I still have the Post-it note, 15 years, traveled across 3 desks and three moves. And basically use that as a filter when you're saying, XYZ does blah, 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 or here's what you're going to get. Use that as a filter to run through everything you're saying and make sure you can answer those questions in a way that the sales team can use when they're doing their conversations. Otherwise, they're going to look at your deck and just say it's a bunch of crap and they're going to throw it out and never use it. And so I did. And long story short, I ended up creating not just a very well used competitive killer kit, but a whole new messaging that was adopted by this company. This was with a company called JDA. It's a supply chain company now, Blue Yonder. I created a new messaging style, I guess that's the term, that was used by the whole company. So not just in my particular area that I ran, but got presented on main stage a couple of times by the CEO, blah, 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 because I reframed how I was thinking. And that really was the shift. So fast forward, and I've trained a lot of people on this, a lot of my product marketing teams, others on using it. About a year and a half ago, I think it was, I was doing interviews and people are asking, what kind of product marketing framework you use. I talk about it. I'm going to write a book. I had free time, so I decided to write a book. And 8 months later, published it in March, and it was pretty cool. So it's been a fun journey. It's funny when you look back and you're writing these things down, you realize how much you know, how much sometimes you've been, even though I say don't take for granted things, you take for granted stuff that you're doing by nature. Again, parallel back to jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's hard sometimes when you're, a black belt and you're doing something, you're showing things, and the white belts, they get 80% of it because I forgot to show my foot turns like that.
Yes.
I just do it. Foot, hand, whatever it's going to be, but I just do it because I just by nature have done it for so many times. It's the same thing when you do messaging and positioning and marketing training. I've done this so many times. Now I got to step back and explain why I did step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So it was very educational for me. I've reread my own book since then. I'm like, okay, I should probably change that. I should change that.
Well, you're going to have a version 2 at some point.
Yeah,
an updated version, right? That's what they do with all the classics, and this may become a classic.
Yeah.
It's really funny, your title, because when I was getting my MBA, this never happened in my education, like, undergrad education, when a teacher would ask you, when a professor would ask you, so what do you think about this? Or who knows what happened at this scene? When I was getting my MBA, all the teachers in my MBA had this question, and I thought it was rude and off-putting, but you'd be doing a case study and you'd raise your hand, or somebody raise their hand, and they'd be like, well, it looks like that software would do, I know that the German culture is taking on this new software, and I understand that, like, in Southern Europe, they're not really up to that level yet. And the professor would say, so what? And it was such an off-putting thing. Like, are you trying to get us to, I always thought it was rude, but now in retrospect, I know what they were trying to do.
Yeah,
they were saying,
I look at the title of my book, and sometimes I feel like I'm being a jerk. I'm like, so what? Why? Who cares? I mean, that's just, that's not my personality, but it does have that bit of an off-putting. I'm like, geez, why is this guy being so rude to me?
But when you recognize that they're asking you, well, put that in a context.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to the listener or to this company if it's a case study, right? And just like if you're teaching jiu-jitsu, So what? So, okay, so if you get the arm, you can do this, and what?
Yeah.
So I think it is a little bit of a like a wake up punch in the face thing, but it's tough love, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
asking people to push themselves and think about, you just said something and what's the implication of it, and how are you going to carry that forward and make a difference?
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
not a magic formula, and it's not magic in general. I mean, it's also not unique. There's many frameworks out there. I'm not saying mine is the best. It's just it's a simplistic way to think about it. But also, I want to make sure I remind people that you don't just go, so what, answer that question, why, answer that question, who cares, answer that question, and you're done.
Mm.
It's meant to challenge the thinking. You might go through so what 2 or 3 times, you might go through why a couple times, who cares a couple times, to get you to the point now you can craft the message you want. You don't just plug it in and you get out a message.
Yeah,
It's a
unfortunately, it's
critical
not that
thinking.
easy.
Yeah, that
It's
would
a
be nice.
process, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Jason, you probably see a lot of this teaching, especially Jason, when you're teaching your fundamentals classes and we're doing the things like the shrimps, which seem absolutely absurd. Like when you walk in as a new person, as a new student, and you're shrimping, I remember thinking that is not going to help me do any. It's not like when you walk into karate and people are doing punches, you're like, yeah, I can see that. When you walk into jiu-jitsu, half of the stuff you learn in the beginning, do you find that, Jason, as a teacher, people are like, what? How is this going to help me do anything? And you have to kind of show them the value.
Yeah, I can 100% relate to that because, it's interesting because when you're talking about, when you were talking a few minutes ago about being in a position and you realize that somebody said, like, how did you do that with your foot? And then you had to think about it and you're like, I don't know why I had to.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting how much correlation there is because you're a black belt, right, Doug?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so you're teaching a lot on the mats, right?
I've been teaching
Maybe
since I
not.
was a mid blue belt, so let's just say 15 years.
Yeah. So by teaching, that made you a better practitioner, right? And and it's so related to you as a product marketer with your book because writing this book actually made you a better product marketer,
Good point.
right?
Yeah, never thought
You
about
know?
that honestly, but yeah, it's a good
So
point.
yeah, it's awesome. And the other thing that I really like that you talked about is simplifying things because, one of the key points that you made earlier is that you're taking like a complex problem and you're turning it into a clear buyer driven outcome, right?
Hmm.
So, you were talking about being like in a position like on the bottom and having a problem and somebody's grabbing you in a certain way. And, when you're a white belt, blue belt, even you have to you're trying to think of all these different ways when actually, if you just broke it down and you literally looked at the details, you took the time to think about what your primary goal is, it just came back to the fundamentals. It just came back to those basic BJJ principles of escaping and getting to a better position, right? So similar to product marketing. Is that correct?
I would think so because again, we can get as fancy as we like, and sometimes we do. And AI, for example, a wonderful way to help augment the stuff that we do. But if you don't have those critical thinking skills, that discernment to figure out the difference between good stuff and the right stuff, to look past what is slick and cool and look at it as a just regular human being and say, if I read that, does it resonate with me? It might sound really good and hit all the corporate buzzwords that our bosses want us to have, but will somebody read that and go, okay, cool, I want to learn more? That's interesting. That's interesting is not the same thing as I want to learn more and I want to buy from you. I mean, there's techniques. Let's keep the jiu-jitsu thing going. There's techniques I'll see. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I will never ever try to attempt that because my body doesn't move like that, or it doesn't fit my game at all. So cool, but you have no appeal to me. So we can talk about this feature, this functionality, this nifty little addition that's gone down. Now the tool has blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's cool. What does it do for me? How does it engage? How do you engage me? And that's what product marketing truly in my mind is about.
What is harder for you, reading an opponent in jiu-jitsu or reading a customer in product marketing?
Ooh, that is a good
Hmm.
question. Damn.
Well, that's a good question. I think I've probably been more surprised by opponents in jiu-jitsu than I have been by customers. Because as we all know, I mean, you could take a 125-pound person, looks kind of like, they're not going to do much, and then they just plow over you. You're like, okay, I didn't expect that. Or some, tall, stringy hair guy who just looks like he, blew it off, and he just ties you, and you're like, I didn't expect that. Most of the time when I'm talking to customers, and I've run a lot of what we call win-loss programs, we really dig into what's going on. It's more like interesting. I've learned a few new things there. It's been pretty cool to learn that. So with jiu-jitsu, it's more of like a, holy crap, did not expect that, as opposed to, I've learned a few new things.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I love the
It's-
storytelling part that you said. I'm sorry, Frank. Just one. I love that storytelling thing that you were talking about earlier in connecting, because a lot of product marketing, I think I'm hearing what you're saying, is that the storytelling allows you to get your message across where people actually feel the product, right? You want them to feel it, right? So have you heard of Maya Angelou?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very famous writer. She said, I think she's famous for saying something along the lines of, people won't care what you've said, people won't care what you've done, but people will care about how you made them feel.
Yes.
So I love that quote. I've always loved that quote. And it really, when you were talking about product marketing, I thought of that quote because, making that connection with people is really important, right?
Yeah. Because once when I say you walk out of the room, and I mean that as far as the message or your solution or whatever advertising you put out there, once it's over and done with, you no longer have their eyeballs. You may still have their attention if you've created something memorable and that sticks with them, and how they felt. If they feel fear, unfortunately, or excitement or longing, you leave that anchor in their brain. You get them hooked. They're going to keep that. They may not remember exactly the name of the solution or the tool or the product. Well, that was, that was really cool. Now you've created that emotional attachment, exactly to your point. You maybe feel something. And again, if I don't feel anything after watching an advertisement or reading a thing that's trying to catch my attention device, I'm off and I'm doing something else. Unless I need it to solve an immediate pain problem. If it's there's so much technology out there, so many tools out there. Yeah, I'd love to buy them all, but I don't have a need right now. If you create a need inside me, how am I living my life without this? I'm remembering that. I'm holding on to that. Okay, cool. So yeah, how you make them feel, it absolutely, I talk about that in my book, I talk about my work, is we've got to make people care. I don't really care about generative AI. I don't really care about large language models. I don't really care about knowledge graphs. I care about what it does and how it makes my life better. I care about working 30 hours instead of 40 hours this week.
We're talking about how important feelings are, right? Feelings are important. And it's funny because you're a business guy, right? And you're saying, well, feelings are the king. Feelings are the most important thing. I do an experiment to my kids in my marketing class, and it's such a simple experiment, but I show how if you've reframed things, the person's feelings change and their whole experience changes, even though the outcome is the exact same. So it's just a little thing. I hand half my kids in class a paragraph about how they're driving their car. It breaks down. They go into the mechanic. The mechanic's like, oh my gosh, it's your timing chain. Let me see if it's covered under a warranty. God, it's not covered. Your warranty just ran out. It's going to take us 5 days. And at the end, they end up waiting 5 days and they have to pay the $800. Then there's another one that says you go in and the guy says, wow, I think this is going to be like an $1,800 job. Then he's like, you know what? Your warranty's out, but I called corporate. I got you down to 8. It usually takes 2 weeks, but I think I could get it done a little faster for you. They call back in 5 days and it's $800. So each side of the class has the same result. Your car broke down, you paid $800, you waited 5 days to get it back. But the framing of the story made half my class in a bad mood and half my class saying, that was pretty good. And
I like that.
Yeah, right. And I do it every year, and the results are always that. So when you talk about creating a story that's going to create an experience, that's going to create a feeling, that really is 90% of the game.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, the guy that wrote the foreword to my book, Scott Taylor, I've known him for I think almost as long as I've been doing jiu-jitsu. They call him the data whisperer. He talks about data and telling stories about data. And he takes one of the most boring topics out there, incredibly engaging speaker. And you may not always walk away with information as much as you walk away with feeling. And I think that's why he is so good. He's done keynotes around the world because he tells engaging stories. He has a sense of humor to it, but he's still serious and he's accurate. And people I've seen him speak for decades. Amazing. And how he engages because people feel,
Right.
either they empathize. Yeah, my job's like that, or, I'm dealing with these pains too, or man, I'd like to change that world. It's about what you feel. I think, Jason, you mentioned this. You're taking that feeling away from that conversation, that message, that whatever it's going to be. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah. And how do you pivot, Doug? So, like, if you try to launch a product and the data is showing that it's not producing too well, what do you do to pivot? Like, how do you take a step back and say, okay, we need to re-strategize this?
I mean, a lot of that comes down to now you just get into running questions again of what did we expect from it? What did we get? What does it not being successful mean? Did we get people's eyeballs and they paid attention? They just decided not to buy at that time. And you can run everything from market analysis to win-loss data to look at and see, what are our customers responding to that? Do customer interviews with it and just do testing like that. That's how I've usually done that, where it's like, okay, we did a decent job, it just didn't resonate. Step back, ask those questions, reevaluate, and then redo the messaging again if you have to, and say, well, here's what we said the first time, and maybe we focused too much on X and Y, and we didn't resonate emotionally, or we didn't resonate with the right audience or talk to the right part of it, and just redo it. That is one of the, I think, the beauties of marketing and product marketing especially, is that it's never done. Messaging is never done. I can finish it, I can write it, I can post it on the website, on LinkedIn, wherever I do it, and we get like almost no tick from it. Okay, cool. We just rewrite it and do it again. One of the things I always talk about I'd like to do is when my messaging is done and my team's messaging is done, have them read it out loud. Because when we write it down, we read it up here, it sounds good. When you read it out loud, if it sounds like you've just swallowed a corporate thesaurus, it's not going to really resonate with anybody. And so that's one of the tests I'll do if I have to redo something. Come back, take the messaging, sit down. Do I feel like I'm trying to convince you at a bar to listen to this amazingly boring thing? It didn't come out right. So you redo it, you pivot to your question, and you try again. That's because we can make changes at all times.
It sounds so much like the mats in jiu-jitsu, learning jiu-jitsu, because you have to, sometimes you start learning a technique. How many times does a coach show a technique, everybody goes and starts drilling it, and then the coach is walking around like, you're not even drilling. This is not what I really wanted you to be doing. And the coach has to reevaluate and be like, hold on, let me back up here. Let me take the time to break this down again and explain the principle of what I really wanted to relay here, So very similar to a product, right? You got the product of technique that you're delivering and the product that you're delivering in marketing, trying to market too, right?
Yeah, it's very true. At Veritas, we joke when that clap happens, 3, 2, 1, it's like the little flashy thingy, and Men in Black is like, what do you say?
That does happen sometimes.
Yeah, it's like you hit the clap, and it's just like reset. But no, and that's what we do have to do sometimes, is do that reset. Is that, and I've done this. I mean, again, I've been in this for quite a long time. I've written stuff that I put out there, and it's good. But in a sea of so many other people out there, we can't just be good. We got to be engaging. Like I said, I keep saying memorable. We've got to last, and like we keep saying, create that emotional thing. That's you're not always going to get it right the first time. It's just like you said, your example about teaching. I think I'm a pretty good instructor. People like my style. I'll show something, and I'm pretty good about showing it. And I'll walk around like, that's not even close.
Yeah.
So you just stop.
Yeah. It happens to me all the time with Frank. When I walk, it's like, Frank, I don't think that was anything close to what I just showed.
I like to think of it as I'm inventive and have my own ways and let the energy flow through my body the way in which it wishes. Thank you. The power of words, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, he burns enough clock so that I don't have as many corrections to make, because
that's exactly, you get less
to a 2-minute roll.
That 2-minute roll, I get less criticism. I've got a better gas tank.
Yep.
Seriously, I'm writing a book, How to Burn Clock, and you're going to get a free copy, Doug.
I love it. We'll get the T-shirt made.
Yeah. Wow. This is
Definitely.
Doug. This is going by so fast. I know that you're
Yeah,
limited on time.
unfortunately.
So let's go ahead and get some. Well, actually, Frank, I need to ask you, what time is it,
Mhm.
Frank?
It's your favorite time of the program. It's tap-in time, where
Tap
we
out.
distill all of the beautiful wisdom that we have learned from this conversation with Doug into little easy bites to take away and to implement in your life. So, Doug, you can see here I have tons of notes.
Nice.
I'm going to do my best in a few minutes to just kind of summarize some of the great things that I saw. So we're going to start off with the importance of finding yourself. Something you said, and I'm a teacher, and this really goes out to young people who are in college or in high school. Like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. They're struggling with that. What I love about your story is you went to school for computer science, and then you took it. You're like, okay, well, I'm not. This is not clicking with me. It's not my thing. But I do love psychology. And then you took your psychology and then you thought, well, I love it, but what am I going to do with it? And you went into counseling. And then in counseling, you sharpened all of your problem solving abilities. You solved people's problems. And you said, what can I do now with this? And you said, I could apply this to business. And you went into marketing using all the skills all the way back from your days in college. And what you did, and what I love that you did, and this is inspirational to people who are younger, is you didn't freak out. You flowed like the water. You were water going down a mountain.
Mhm.
You took your test in computer science, like, oh, damn, I hit a boulder. And you just went, okay, I'm going to go left because I like psychology. And then you started solving problems. You're like, I really like this, but now I need a new challenge. And kids out there, my students and all students, please remember this. If you're flexible and roll, nothing you did before that is a waste. So his psychology is helping him kill it in the business world, right? Those skills of psychology, you're using them today to
Absolutely.
help businesses reach. So that right there is a great thing for the youth, our youthful listeners. I'd also like to say that this is a little off, but you said something like this guy comes in, he has all these tattoos, he's like a rough looking guy, and then you're like, oh my gosh, he's the nicest guy in the world. I'm
Awesome.
reading a book right now called Think Slow, Think Fast. It talks about how we take shortcuts a lot, and the shortcuts are usually right, but they're not always right. And so judging a book by its cover or having a sense of somebody, you said it best. You ask a lot of questions and then you said meet people where they are.
Mm.
And you really implied don't assume who they are. And that's probably why you're a great instructor as a black belt because you do that. You don't make any assumptions. You ask a lot of questions. Why are you here? You don't assume you're here to be an MMA fighter, or you don't assume you're here just to get more flexible. Asking questions is the magic formula. And your entire everything we talked about, you put that as the center of the universe. Asking them, finding out, questions, questions, questions. Anybody in the corporate world, there's your takeaway right there. Ask questions of your employees, ask questions of your customers, ask questions of yourself. Very, very powerful. You talked about how important it is that we ask ourselves, every person listening right now, what will success look like when I get there? You need to paint that picture. A lot of times we forget that and we're just rowing in a direction.
Mhm.
We're rowing due north, but we don't know what success is going to look like. Every day you need to revisit that vision. You spoke about the importance of clarity. You need to you need to know who your audience is, and you do not need to be slick. You don't need big vocab words, although I love vocabulary. You don't need vocab words. What you really need is to understand your audience and ask the question, who cares? Why should
Mhm.
they care? So what? And what I loved about that question is while it sounds harsh, if you think about it, it's the ultimate in empathy, is it not?
Yes.
You're you're putting yourself in your customer or your student's chair and you're saying, "I'm you. What part of this is important to me and why would I care?" And if the
100%.
answer is and
Yeah.
if the answer is nothing, well then let's change it so it provides value. So though, so what, why, who cares is the answer to empathy. And
Mhm.
that's what your book is about. So we're going to have that link there.
I'll have
Please
to
check
write
out
that
that
down. That's
book.
pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, you could take it. You don't even have to footnote me. You can if you want. You could footnote the clock burner if
Clock
you'd
burner.
like. And the best way to learn is to teach. You said it. Your book is making you a better consultant because you're like, oh, yeah, that's why I do that. Let me make sure I always do that. And Jason, you said the same thing when you're teaching a technique and you're like, why is my foot moving up? My foot has to move left so he can't sweep me, right? And now you're becoming a better, because you're a student too. If you're a teacher, you're still a student, right? And you're helping yourself learn. And I would say the last and most important thing we got from this, and I don't care if my friends on the mat make fun of me, but feelings are important. Feelings are the center of every decision you make, whether you're a cold engineer or you're a fluid artist. If you don't deal with feelings, you're not dealing with the human and you're not going to make progress. And we'll close on that at 10:58 as we promised.
Very well said, Frank. That was one of the best tap outs I've heard you do.
That was great.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm moving
Guys,
up in ranks.
I really appreciate this. I wish we could have talked for a couple more hours. This has been, I think I love what you guys are doing. It's not just me enjoying this, but I love what you guys are doing as part of this. I've listened to several great stories, and to your point, I hope the listeners pick something up, whether it's the teens, the business people, pick something up that can help make their life better. So thank you for this.
They absolutely will. And please share this with your network of people. You're in Oklahoma, so we love to look at our little metrics and we can see like where the people are looking in. So we hope to see your friends looking in and appreciating your wisdom.
We'll do. All right.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks
Doug,
very much.
where can they buy your book, Doug?
Yeah, Amazon. You can do it on Kindle and you can do it on paperback. Either one works fine. Amazon's a great place to work.
All right.
Easy
We'll leave the
peasy,
link in the
lemon
description.
squeezy.
All right, cool.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good one.
All right, Doug.
Good
Thank
luck
you
with
so
your call.
much.
Take
Thank you.
care.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Well, there you have it. As we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the powerful connections we've explored between the art of Jiu-Jitsu and your career. In your workplace and in Jiu-Jitsu, you learn to adapt and navigate challenges. So remember that persistence and the courage to embrace the lessons that you learn are the keys to your growth both on the mat and in your career.